Do, 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 do. What's up, guys? Welcome
What's up?
to Superhero Chat. I'm
Number
Jonathan.
632.
Jonathan, this is Lewis. And we're going to be talking today about how DC can fix Heroes in Crisis, among a bunch of other stuff. But that's going to be our main topic for tonight.
Yeah.
But first, news and notables.
Woo! Wake Forest Comic Con. Every time. If I can find this piece of paper on my desk, every time.
That's funny.
There's the details. There's a bunch of cool Lego figures you can buy. Some cool artwork. Cool cosplay. Comic books to buy. And I don't know what this is. Artists or cosplay artist. She's right there. Anyway. Yeah, Play for Life is hosting its annual Wake Forest Comic Con. It doesn't say mini on there. I'm a little disappointed by that because I always thought it was funny when it was the mini Comic Con. But yeah, if you guys are in Wake Forest area, August 10th, show up. We'll be there. You'll find us digging through the back issues, bothering Brandon, or possibly pestering an artist to produce a work of art for less than they're worth.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that's the new stuff from me. The only other thing is I got this amazing comic right here.
Slide over to your right a little. There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was jealous when you found that.
Yeah. $1, folks. So this is Marv Wolfman writing the reboot of Adventures of Superman after Infinite Crisis on Infinite Earths. The comic cover here is an homage to an earlier Superman comic. I think it's Superman 14. And this isn't the only time they've homaged that cover, but I have wanted this comic for a while, and I was hoping I would find it, and look, I found it. So dig through your dollar bins, kids. Quarter bins, 50-cent bins, whatever kind of cheap bins they have, because it's worth it. It's good stuff. The issue itself is not too bad. Entered its first appearance of Dr. Emil Hamilton. Some of you may know him from the cartoon series Superman and Justice League. So, yeah, I've wanted that one for a while, and I was willing to pay more for it, but for $1, why wouldn't I buy that? So, I've read a few others, too, and I feel like I got my money's worth. I was reasonable. I only spent like $13. Of course, $2 worth of that was for some comics I gave Jonathan. So, if I'm going to recommend something, I've got to be willing to put my money where my mouth is, right?
Yeah.
And it worked out for you because you got at least 4 new comics from my purchasing. So.
Yeah, well, you handed me a huge stack about that thick.
I know, but
it's like you have to buy this.
No. I didn't say you had to buy all of those. I just said if you're going to keep that series, you may as well have the whole series. Yeah. And here's like 20-something comics that go along with that. So
yeah, I'm just messing with it. Oh man, our streaming is slow today. I hate that.
Weird.
Yeah, it's a little jumpy. But somebody else is watching. Welcome. Appreciate you jumping in. It's a little jumpy in the video, but if you chat, we can talk with you. Hopefully the audio is better than the video. We're doing everything we can.
I'll just tell you, like Clint Howard said one time in The Waterboy, I am not a particularly handsome man. And so you don't come to look at us; you come to listen to us, I guess. So
I guess
it works out, right?
Yeah, I guess some YouTubers use pick a photo and all you see is like their one or two photos. But yeah, I don't know. For now, this is what we got. I mean, last week's was pretty good. I don't know what's different about today. Anyways, so a couple things for me that I read that were really noteworthy. Number 15 of the Terrifics.
Nice.
I love this series. If you're new here, this is my favorite ongoing right now. It's excellent. It's excellent.
Consistently well written, right?
Right. It's goofy. It's funny. Good story. It's great. For a knockoff of the Fantastic Four, they did a great job. Honestly, most of the New Age of Heroes did really well. So I don't know why DC canceled them all. But I guess sales are different than story writing. So
right.
Anywho, especially all the money they had to put in to advertise for them.
I know, and all the big name creators they got for it.
Right. But anyways, the other one I got is Freedom Fighters number 5. I really enjoyed this series. It's great. It's Venditti. I had one problem with this issue. Is that they called the Nazis cops. And I was like, okay, maybe it's a little too far. I'm not sure. They're like, oh, the cops are coming.
Well, but that's because the Nazis have taken over the world.
Right. I just feel like, even still, I doubt Americans would relate them with our police force.
But the problem is, the Nazis won World War II, so they're everywhere. They're not just in Germany, though.
I understand that, because these are Americans calling them cops. Nobody else calls them cops. I don't know. It just, with all the stuff with anti-cop stuff going around the last couple years, I felt like maybe that was a little too much. And I don't think that Americans would ever truly give in to the point of not giving them a worse name. Like we have police. I don't think we would have equated a invasion force with our police.
But they're the government now.
Well, they are the government, but I feel like we still would see them as invaders. Even nearly 100 years later. I think we would have come up with a negative term for them and not just have them adopt the regular term we had for police. I mean, it's all hypothetical, but
we haven't been invaded in such a way that we would even have to think about that. So, maybe.
But I think we would have called them something negative. I mean, they call them ratsies in this. I think that's what we would have referred to them as.
That's such a classic way to refer to them. They do that in the Invader stuff too. That's set in the middle of World War II.
I think that's more real to life than us eventually coming to and calling them something pleasant. But anyways, I just felt like it was a little too much with all the anti-cop stuff going around, kind of calling Nazis cops and this kind of. That's the only problem. I mean, the story is really great. Seeing Uncle Sam running around talking about the true spirit of America, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And I loved it because there's one scene where he's like. I'm not trying to get too political on here, but this is a political comic book, so he's like, America wasn't perfect. We got a lot of things wrong, too much wrong. But the spirit of 76 burns, and I'm like, let's go. Like, sure, we got some stuff wrong. We fixed it. We probably still have stuff wrong. We're working on it. But hey, we've still got that American pride, and we're ready to take on the world. Let's go. That's some good stuff in there. So I really love Venditti's one of my favorite current writers. Love it.
Uncle Sam is such an interesting, strange but interesting character.
It's funny because he's so goofy. Like, I mean, and
Right.
we don't even talk about Uncle Sam, but today, like, it's something that was, you know, more prominent as a character, you know, long before we were born. And now, like, we don't really talk that much about Uncle Sam, but they capture him in a comic book, and it's like, wow, like, I can see that. That's awesome.
We're gonna have to do a you know, top 10 like patriotic characters or something.
Yeah. Are there more than one in comic books? Oh, well, I mean, I guess Captain America and Superman, but
Well, I don't count Superman just because his isn't so ingrained with the country anymore. But like,
well,
you
it
have the
was when he
Patriot-
started.
No, that was the radio show.
Okay, still close enough. His
That's true.
early days, he was very highly associated with America.
Right.
And so they spent decades trying to disassociate him with America.
No, that's more recent actually. They just didn't play it up. But well, okay.
I think it's not that they were trying to disassociate him with America as much as they were trying to make him more of a world figure to represent Earth than specifically America. Sorry for the misstep there, but yeah, 'cause he's a world.
You know, I'm just teasing you, right?
Right. He's American.
America, baby, America.
Which is why you have those, you know, what if stories where he lands in Russia instead and becomes a communist, and you know.
That's right, Red Sun.
So that kind of proves that he's an American hero, right there.
Ironically, he was still raised by farmers.
Yeah.
So.
Anywho, that's way off topic. Obviously, the biggest news and notable for both of us is that we saw Avengers Endgame.
Oh, I forgot we did that. No, I'm kidding.
Oh man, we won't spoil it on here right now. Next
we did
week,
some of that the other day.
Next week, I think we'll have a longer discussion, so you have till then to watch it. And I might be going to see it again this week. Man, it's so good. I've heard some criticisms about it, and I thought a small portion of what they were saying was true. But I'm not going to talk about it right here, so because I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. But it's amazing. It's really good. And so you can go watch our predictions video from last week. If you haven't already, you can see how much we got right, or you can see what we think is going to happen in the movie before you go see it. Up to you. But it's a fun movie. Really great. Really pays homage to everything that's been going on the last 10 years in the films.
Yeah.
So, and does it in a fun, new, creative way. It's pretty awesome. So, yeah, we loved it. We loved it. And
who would you say is your favorite character? You don't have to tell why, but who might be your favorite character?
In the Marvel movies?
No. In this movie in particular, yeah.
Pretty much the same as it always has been. Captain America.
Oh, okay.
I've always liked Captain America. He's probably my favorite Marvel character. So,
nice.
And so I love all three Captain America movies. Now, one thing, and I'm going to try to be real careful not to say too much, but obviously something happened in the last film, and kind of a major issue in this film is about handling grief. And I think the biggest criticism that I heard was that they don't really do a good job telling you how we should handle grief. They kind of get to a point where they're they're about to have like a good explanation for it, and then they kind of don't tell it. And I thought that was a pretty
they were trying to. Yeah, I think they were trying really hard though to just leave it in that ambiguous universal sense where not everybody's going to feel the same way.
Yeah.
I'd
say more to clarify, but I can't.
I know. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it more next week. I think everybody.
I think part of the problem is that, the amount of time that they are trying to portray.
Yeah.
Between movies and stuff like that. Does that make sense without spoiling anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
But great movie, loved it. It's a great movie. We had a few complaints which we listed pretty extensively in our reaction video. And again, we'll probably talk more about next week. Because we don't want somebody to jump on and then have Avengers spoiled for them. So,
yeah.
If we can have somebody jumped on, welcome. Appreciate you watching. Sorry the video is a little jumpy today. I don't know what's going on. But at least, hopefully the audio is working well. I have a dumb computer, and it does it from time to time. But, anywho. Alright, well, that's enough about Avengers. Go watch it if you haven't. It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. It really pays off.
Yes.
Well, and I
think that's a great way to summarize it.
And so I'm excited to see where they go next. I think I can say this without spoiling anything because it's not really in the movie. I think where Marvel has to go next is the Fantastic Four. They have to go to the Fantastic Four because I think that's going. If they don't, I don't know that the direction is going to hold up to super well.
Right.
But if they get the Fantastic Four in and they get it well, we'll be solid. I think for another 10 years.
Yeah, we talked about this at dinner on Saturday when we were hanging out, and so much of the ideas that we were putting forth for quality movies and quality bad guys for the future require the presence of the Fantastic Four in some capacity. Otherwise, their villains and their storylines are just going to be ignored, and you can't really do that and then say, hey, now we're making a Fantastic Four movie. Too late, Marvel, too late. We did all that already. Thanks.
Yeah.
So we can't really do that.
Yeah, I have a feeling that one of the reasons they bought the Fantastic Four back was because they knew they didn't have anywhere else to go. They got the X-Men now too, so.
Yeah, I almost imagine though they'll probably do Fantastic Four stuff and then shift into
X-Men,
like a X-Men / Avengers kind of thing, with the potential for future Fantastic Four type things as well.
Yeah.
If they focus, if they do the kinds of things we were talking about, which at some point folks will share with you what we're talking about, but we're trying not to spoil anything or, that sort of thing.
Right.
But it would carry them probably 5 years, right? Even with 2 movies a year.
Yeah.
So.
But I think that's all the news and notables I got for this week. Do you have anything you were reading this week?
Oh, just what I showed earlier.
The Marvel Wolf and Superman. I don't remember. Did you say that it was? Did you say it was Marvel Wolf?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Sweet. Well, cool. Well, let's jump into it.
All right, so I'll let you set up the way that, because spoilers, folks, we're going to talk about the newest issue of Heroes in Crisis and sort of the way that this could have been avoided.
Right.
Um,
And how it could
and
be fixed.
potentially how it could be fixed. Yeah,
All right.
because I'm gonna spend most of my time focusing on how this could have been avoided and still kept a cohesive storyline for most of what's already been revealed, or whatever. So
Yeah.
you go ahead and set up the rest of Heroes, because you've read it all.
Well, I haven't
up to
read that issue, but I read all the other issues.
Right. So, but I just feel like you would be the better one to set it up.
Right. Anyways, so if you haven't seen it already, we have I put out a reaction to Heroes in Crisis number 8, and kind of a brief summary of what I said is how I found out about it was actually Lewis texting me, because my comic book guy actually forgot to put it in my box for this week, and I'm kind of glad he did, because having found out what happened with Wally and the fact that they made Wally the killer is really an abomination of a comic book.
Yeah.
There's no real nice way to put it. That's
about as nice as we can put it without.
It's a horrible thing, and you'd be like, "Hey, aren't you the guys who claim that the Emerald Twilight story is one of the best Kyle Rayner and Hal Jordan stories?" And yes, you're right about that. But me and Lewis had a long conversation about this Saturday night over dinner. It's funny, after the Avengers, we talked more about Heroes in Crisis than we did about Avengers.
Well, we did a video immediately following the movie, so.
Yeah. I think the reason is because of how things went down. So in Heroes in Crisis 8, we find out that Wally West is trying to outrun, or something to the effect, the technology and catch up with all the data before it's deleted or something in the computer. Not sure how you do that, but unless you're like the Atom.
Science!
But somehow running through the Speed Force is able to connect him into the computer so that he can somehow learn the information before it's deleted. Don't ask me how that works. Of course, maybe the comic book, I didn't read it again. Maybe the comic book explains it. But, it makes sense that he's faster than the computer, and he could do that if he could somehow access the data. Like, he'd have to get a computer that's as fast as him. But that's beside the point. Anyways.
So he doesn't just access the data. He saves it from being erased, because he's the one who gives it to Lois Lane.
Right. So, anywho, so he's trying to do that, and something about him being in the Speed Force causes him to explode because he loses control over it or something, and he kills everybody. And then he sets up Booster and Harley to be the fall, the scapegoats, basically. And then he runs around and saves Poison Ivy. I don't know. It's weird. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for the character. If for some reason he accidentally blew up and killed everybody would know it's not his fault. Like, he doesn't have to go the extra step and blame people for it. But also, this is the most powerful Flash. He's been able to run in and out of the Speed Force like that. How is he going to lose control over the Speed Force? Ridiculous. You got to give us a reason that he loses control.
Right. Well, and so the reasoning seems to be that he was overcome with grief. And that's all well and good in one sense. But the problem arises in the way that he covers it up. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
He goes from an act, like, it's sort of like you have a hit and run, right? you're driving down the road and somebody steps out into the road and you can't move and you hit them. And instead of sticking around and dealing with the consequences of that, you make it look like somebody else hit them.
Yeah.
And then you flee the scene and you never speak of it again. That's not the character Wally West. Like, he owns up and fesses up when he does wrong things. So I have no idea where the next issue is going. I am perplexed at how the writer thinks he's going to accomplish what he set out to do. That is, have a discussion about post-traumatic stress disorder within the superhero framework. I think this, and this is one of the first things I told you the other night, is he could have chosen to go a couple of different routes, or he could have chosen with pre-existing characters, or he could have chosen to go the Watchmen route, which why he didn't, I'll never understand, where he just creates his own little universe, right? With these characters that vaguely resemble the ones that we're more familiar with, who have similar issues, right? And then explore that topic instead of tarnishing the heroes that we've come to love and appreciate. Like I told you, I don't think it's appropriate for people to issue death threats against creators.
Yes, please don't. Like, nobody should ever do that.
But at the same time, we care about these characters, so we understand why you're upset.
Right.
Right. And so I just can't see where this story's going, though. And I don't need to.
Well, and we were furious when you killed off Wally West, and then you go and defame him and make him a murderer.
A mass murderer.
Like, what? Like, you're like, just wait and see how it turns out. Well, we waited, and you made the character even worse.
Yeah, right. So, like, the analogy that I saw him use in some interview was it's like somebody who goes into a school and shoots it up, and I'm like,
Wally West? No, never.
I don't ever want a hero that I'm a fan of to go that route for any reason. That just seems absurd. Like, I get that there are these guys who are stressed out in life and they turn the corner and involve themselves in workplace violence and things like that. But there's still something sympathetic. It's not like they're trying to cover it up. They just, there's something mentally wrong with them, and that's not being conveyed well in this series. So if you guys are a fan of it, we're not trying to dog you out, but we don't like what they're doing to one of our favorite characters.
Yeah.
And to run it back real quick, you mentioned Emerald Twilight with Hal Jordan. I read Hal Jordan comics before I found out who Kyle Rayner was, but then I read the 0 Hour issue. My cousin had bought it, and he lent it to me on a field trip. We were in 8th grade, and I don't know why this is so familiar to me, but we were on a field trip to one of the so in 8th grade we had a social studies class about North Carolina, and we were going to have to do some sort of report. And I remember we went to a tobacco museum. I think it was in Durham, and he brought that on the bus, and I remember reading it. And in that issue, Kyle is fighting Hal on Oa, and Oa explodes at the end. So,
spoiler, I haven't gotten that far.
Huh?
I said spoiler, I haven't gotten that far.
Yeah, it's in that issue you read.
Is it?
Yeah, that trade paperback you have.
I don't remember that.
Okay.
Anyways.
It happens within. You read the issue where he meets Alan Scott, right?
Right.
Yes, so I'm pretty sure that issue's in there.
I don't think he fights Hal. Like, Kyle doesn't fight Hal until a good bit later, if he fights him. Yeah, he does fight him. It's there's a gap between the Emerald Twilight story and when Kyle has to face Hal.
Oh, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, that trade paperback you have, though, has the Emerald Twilight and then the first part of Kyle's story. And so within, like, the first 4 or 5 issues of Kyle being Green Lantern, he has to fight Hal.
Yeah.
So I'm really sorry if...
You're fine. I've read the whole thing.
Okay.
I just forgot about that. I'm just picking on you because you're always talking to me about spoilers.
Anyway, so the point that I'm trying to come to is folks who look at the way we're responding to this versus the way that we're like, that's an awesome story, is because Hal's not trying to cover up what he's doing per se. Right? Like, he went into space and he fought the Green Lantern Corps because he thought that was going to help him achieve an end. The end was obviously fueled by grief and that sort of thing. But he didn't like pretend like, oh, Harley did it or Booster did it and I'm dead too.
Right.
He's like, no, this needs to happen.
Well, right? And we had a linear story where we saw that Hal had an idea and he believed that the Green Lantern Corps should go with him, go along with him. He didn't want to fight them. They fought him to stop him because he had gone crazy. And he just couldn't tell. It's different with Wally, who's kind of doing all this in secret. We see him killed off screen. We don't know why. And we still, as far as I know, I don't know why he died.
He kills himself to plant the body so that he's above suspicion.
Oh my goodness!
And as a form of justice.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So think about a storyline where he's tasked with stopping a bomb. But he can't stop it, so he outruns it, and everybody that was there dies, and then he comes back and covers it up and makes it look like he was never there. Yeah. Right? That's the story that we've got. Yeah, he's got to defuse a bomb. He can't. It blows up. He outruns it, and instead of saying, I'm sorry I failed, he says, no, it wasn't my fault. I was never there to begin with.
All right,
that's the story we're dealing with, basically.
So that's our outrage. You heard us. Why we don't like it. Why we don't think it equates with something like Emerald Twilight, which really fundamentally changes how we saw the character of Hal Jordan.
Right.
So we don't because of how the stories are so different, we don't think that they are justifiably connected. You can't say that one of them is... that one of them is obviously better. It's written better, and it gives adequate justification for why the character's doing this out of his own personality. Unlike Wally West, who doesn't. This isn't his character. He's acting as if it's somebody else. Right. And honestly, if they had used anybody else, there were so many characters they could have used that are not Wally West. That would have been better, and I'd have been more than happy with the story, like Harley Quinn. But let's.
Do you want to talk about that?
Let's move on to how they could have fixed it. Let's do first how they could have written it better, a better storyline, and then afterwards we'll talk about where DC can go from where we are, because obviously it's been done. So where do we go next? Let's talk about how this could have been better. You want to start, or shall I?
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. So my first sort of way that this could have been written is that Harley Quinn, for some reason, she's reformed, right? Like that's sort of the tagline. So let's say she's reformed to the point where she's like, you know what? I don't necessarily want to be a hero like Batman or Superman. but I want to help the heroes be heroes, right? And so she's like, how can I do that? Well, obviously, heroes experience trauma. I am a psychiatrist. I'm well trained in that. Obviously, she had her own Stockholm syndrome kind of thing going on with Joker, where she identified with her kidnapper, so to speak. But she's over that, right? Like she's moved to a place where she's still wacky, she's still a little touched in the head, but at the same time, she wants to do good, and so she serves as the psychiatrist there, right? Because not only as a crazy, as a psychotic individual, would she serve as a mirror, but she would also, like, you don't want to go here, like a broken mirror. So, but at the same time, she could help them, like, with her training, seek to approach healing, that sort of thing. Because obviously she couldn't heal them per se. Because mental illness and stress, like post-traumatic stress disorder, those are things you carry with you all your life. They're not necessarily things you ever get over in a final sense. Because you think of like Vietnam veterans who hear a car backfire and then they relive this awful moment that they experienced in the Vietnam War or something like that. But anyway, it quickly becomes too much for her. And she thinks that, you know what, using the metaphor that Tom King built into his storyline, saying the Puddlers are dead.
Which kind of sounds like something that
right,
Harley
but then you get like multiple layers, right? Because he's arguing the puddler is the guy who skims the dross off the top of the refining fire. So you're refining gold and you have the impurities rise to the top and you clean them off, right? So she could be the puddler and also say that the puddlers are dead because she's a villain character. So in killing the weak heroes that need to die because they're, fractured beyond being heroes or something, which she's familiar with, right? Because she was a doctor. She fell in love with the Joker. She went on to become this psychopathic murderer character, right? And she tried to do good, and so now she's trying to do good, but it's causing her to do something terrible, which is go back to her old ways. And so this could be a character progression moment for her where she goes back to her old ways, but not necessarily with the Joker, and she tries to do better than the Joker. Because in her mind, she's doing good by eliminating the weak heroes, right? But then she becomes a supervillain in her own right, who's always at odds with, the hero, not because she's just wanting to kill people, but she sees value in killing people, right? And she still keeps her wacky personality and that sort of thing. But at the same time, you're not deviating from her character, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the simplest. And so that was like the story that I came up with off the top of my head when I read the first issue. I'm like, I can legitimately see her being the killer, right? Booster Gold doesn't make a lick of sense as the killer. Right. So I was hurt to read that the finger was ever pointed at him, like despite the trauma that he experienced trying to go back in time or whatever with.
Let's be honest. The first half of the series was completely dedicated to trying to make us think that Booster could have done it.
Right.
Like, they didn't spend time trying to make us think that Booster didn't do it. And they didn't spend time trying to make us think that Harley could have done it. They spent time trying to make us think that Harley couldn't have done it and that Booster did. because
Right.
it doesn't make any sense for Booster to, but it makes plenty of sense for Harley to.
Right, and yet they completely screwed that up,
Yeah,
and,
it was
and they
terrible.
did it on purpose. They did it on purpose.
But how
But
much?
that actually makes more sense, doesn't it?
How
Like,
much?
she looks at the superhero community and says, "There's some dross here. We need to clean it off." And I'm going to be the puddler who cleans the dross off and purifies the hero community, because who knows better than Harley Quinn who deserves to be a hero and who doesn't?
Would have been a better. I mean, it would have been a great Harley Quinn story.
Right.
Having her be the focus.
It would have been a character-defining moment for her where she stops playing sort of at being the psycho and being the hero, and now she's just Harley Quinn, and she does whatever she wants to do, and
Trying to be good, but ends up being evil instead.
Right.
For
a good reason in her mind.
Right. Yeah, so that's one way that they could have written it better. I think that if they had done similar to the Emerald Twilight, where they had, Emerald Twilight story, and I forget which episode or which issue it was in Williamson's Flash. I think it was like,
the Flash War.
Right.
We led up to 50,
I think
right?
that was 49 and 50, where they're trying to stop Wally from going into the Speed Force and destroying everything. But they can't. I think if they had basically done something similar to that, where Wally's trying to get his family back, and he doesn't care what it takes, and it's only afterwards that he realizes that what he's doing is hurting everybody else.
Right.
And then you could have ended with Roy, or with Wally holding Roy in his arms. Like, what have I done?
Right. And then only one character has to die there, right?
Right. I mean, he could take out a whole bunch of random characters and maybe even kill some of them. But just all the ones that died in this in the series could have still died. But
Right.
the one that really makes him figure out what's wrong, what he's done, would be Roy, and that would be a great way to do it. And I hate to kill Roy because I like Roy.
Right.
But I think that would be a great story that we all could have believed, and we'd be like, I see why Wally West is like this, and it would take us a while to really for him to forgive himself, and we would be right there with him. We'd understand why he did what he did, and he'd have to work his way back, and it would honestly be a lot like Barry, and it'd be Wally's Flashpoint basically. He got so focused on what he wanted to do, what he felt like he needed, which is his family, that he didn't care what the cost was, and the cost being his friends.
You know what? It also would have been a good Barry story, because he'd be like realizing somehow he failed Wally.
Yeah.
And I've got to wonder if that's ever going to come up, like where he owns that Flashpoint was his fault, that this new universe they're living in is his fault, that Wally can't have his family, that all these people have died. At some point, Barry has to acknowledge that, you know what, maybe my mom living, it wasn't for the best.
Yeah. Well, and it would have also brought up some really interesting ideas, like what happens when a superhero goes rogue? Like, what do you do with them?
Right.
If he accidentally kills somebody while fighting them when they were trying to stop him from doing a bigger evil, like, what do you do? Like, you've got this guy, Wally West, with all this power. You can't really stop him unless he's willing, which he would be, I think.
Right.
I think he would put himself in like his own kind of prison. Might not be physically, but it would be emotionally. And what do? You can't put him in regular prison, and there's not really a way to hold him that would really be effective in the long run. So
ultimately, if you didn't want him on the table, couldn't you find a way to kill him like you killed Barry? So he has a good death.
Yeah. Well, they're leading up to a good one, or they have been for 2 years now. Doomsday Clock. There's a great way to kill off an amazing character in such a great way. But
who's going to care that
I'm not advocating for him, but yeah. So that's one way. Another way they could have done it. Obviously, the best way would have been not to even use Wally West at all as the villain, and have some random dude in there, and that would have been much better, and not kill Roy and Wally. I think in my last video I talked about how this is similar to the Mandarin story of Iron Man 3.
Yeah, I remember you mentioning that.
How if they had used anybody but the Mandarin's name, it would have been a great movie. Everybody would have loved it, because it had, well, the main villain was kind of weak to begin with, but still, they were building up toward this one thing, and then they halfway through the movie switched, and it was this other thing, and it's like, so you used our emotions to get to this worthless villain that we don't care about.
I just wanted you to know, J-Wag and I had this conversation last night.
That's fine.
I was explaining to him how disappointing Iron Man 3 was.
Yeah.
I said, bro, have you seen it yet? He's like, no, I'm going to marathon them over the summer and then watch Endgame. And I'm like, okay, totally makes sense, right? I said, just be aware that Iron Man 3 is a terrible, terrible movie. It is a stain on the otherwise good reputation of the Marvel MCU.
Yeah.
That movie, above all the others, in my mind, is an abomination. I was like, dude, here's what I want you to do before you watch
the Incredible Hulk.
I like see, you keep thinking Hulk.
I was making a joke about the villain of the Incredible Hulk.
But I like the Abomination. Wow.
Is the Abomination? Over my head.
I wish I were Drax. I'd reach up and catch it because my reflex is gone. No, thank you. Okay. I'm glad you explained that, because otherwise we're like, what are you talking about? If you go back and you watch the trailer for Iron Man 3, if you're anything like me, you were sold. You were like, this is not the comic book character, but I'll buy this. I will go all in on this character that's presented in the trailer. And then the stupid movie happened, and you're like, no! I told J-Wag, I was like, man, I had my own con moment. Gone! Where I'm just like so bothered.
Yeah.
That this is the route that they chose to go for such a seminal character. Like, I get that they don't want, Asian, particularly Chinese people, offended by this guy. But he could be any nationality. He's the head of this terrorist group, right?
Right.
It doesn't matter where he's from. He literally could have just pretended to be from any country. I don't care about that. My thing is, he doesn't want the advance of technology. He wants to keep the world in darkness so that it is basically under him, right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need the character that's got the literal 10 rings, because I felt like the way they organized the movie and fronted some things, foreshadowed some things way back even in Iron Man 1, I'm like, I'm okay with what I'm presented in the trailer. And like I said, I was willing to go all in on that representation of the character, and then they did what they did, and I'm just so, like, even just talking about it, I feel like my blood pressure.
Yeah.
Just go back and give me the movie that's promised by that trailer. That's what I want.
I knew that I was risking a good 5 minutes by mentioning Mandarin.
Do you need me to go and take a walk? Why don't you walk for a talk and come back and let you finish telling everybody what you were saying?
But like how they tricked us into, I didn't know anything about the Mandarin, so they really didn't really trick me, which is why I can enjoy the movie and Lewis can't.
That's right. It's
the
Iron
story,
Man Lex Luthor.
The story is pretty good. The problem is the way they did it. They used a fan favorite villain for Iron Man. They kind of built him up, and then they didn't pay it off. It would be like if they kind of
Batman v Superman with Lex Luthor.
I was about to do some stuff with it. It'd be some. I was about to do some stuff with Endgame, and I don't want to spoil it. It'd be like if they built up. Let's take the Justice League. They built up Superman's return and then didn't bring him back. Like it makes no sense. And this is kind of how it is in Heroes in Crisis. They've been building this stuff up. If they had used any other character other than the Mandarin in Iron Man 3 to promote it, and that it wouldn't have been received the way it was. Because the film I think is written well. Iron Man does a great job. Robert Downey Jr. is what I meant, does a good job. The Iron Man story, like the character development is really good. The problem is that they did a bait and switch. They advertised for something, and it really wasn't what it was.
And we're not opposed to bait and switches if it has that payoff.
Yeah.
Right? So if you go to watch Endgame and you expect them to do something with the disappearances, and that's never addressed in the movie,
you're not going to be happy.
You're going to be upset about that because you're like, how can they go the whole movie and not address this? It was the huge ending. This has to be addressed.
So if they had done something similar with Wally West and not used Wally West, a fan favorite hero that you killed off and then made look like an abomination of a person, we would have been fine. If they had used a random character, any of the characters that died that nobody cared about, we wouldn't have cared. It would not have been as big a deal. But instead, you pick a fan favorite character that they literally brought back 2 or 3 years ago, and as an apology, they brought him back as kind of an apology of everything they had done to Wally West and the greater DC universe as a whole that we didn't like.
What was he supposed to represent again?
Huh?
What was his character's return supposed to represent again? Do you remember?
I don't remember. What?
Hope. His character was supposed to symbolize the return of hope to the DC universe.
And then you squander it and destroy it and deface it. It's horrible. It's one of the worst things DC's done in a long time. And might be one of the worst things they've ever done.
This is worse than leaving him in limbo and never addressing it.
Yeah.
Like, that made me mad. That he was just gone and non-existent. And I was like, you know what? That's fine. Whatever. Is that what you want to do? That's fine. I can get over that. I can move on with my life. I don't care. But then you brought him back in such a big and monumental way, only to do this to him. That's like a girl breaking up with you, getting back with you, just so she can do something even worse to you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically a big middle finger to all the fans of DC. Specifically, people who've loved the comics for a long time, and the characters for a long time. And, yeah, I hate that. I hate that. All right, so where can DC go from here? Where can DC go?
I don't know. I've had a couple more theories of how they could have made the story better.
Yeah.
So let me run through this real quick. So the masks, that the robots or the people use to remain anonymous.
Yeah.
They look very similar to the Medusa mask that Psychopirate has. Psychopirate is kind of a know-nothing villain. I mean, he's like bargain basement kind of character. I mean, he's famous in the sense that number one, he's the only person. He's one of the handful of people who remembers before the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So that's a spoiler, Jonathan. Sorry.
That's all right. Who knows when I'll actually read it?
Yeah. Additionally, he tortured Barry Allen in the Crisis storyline. Like, he was working with one of the bad guys, and he was perpetually using his powers to torture Barry Allen. Like, he hates the Flash. So, having him work behind the scenes to either precipitate Wally killing everyone, or like this mass hysteria moment that resulted in everyone kind of attacking each other, and then somehow framing it so that it looks like Wally was the killer. I could buy that. So that's actually one way that if it turned out that way, hey, that'd be great.
If you're using Flash villains, you could use Abracadabra, and it turn out that he's actually kind of made everything look like it happened this way, but in reality, it's all a ruse to do some nefarious thing. But it wouldn't really fit the tone of the book, but it'd be funny.
Yeah. That's true, because he was involved with Flash's return in the Titan series that Dan Abnett was writing, where they addressed the way that Wally felt with Linda rejecting him, right? Yeah. Like, they dealt with that. And he's like, well, as long as I have my friends. So I guess another possible way that they can address it is that his friends dipped out on him. But they didn't really, right? Because Donna's still around. Yeah. Rick Grayson still. I mean, I'm sorry. Dick Grayson.
Yeah, let's get the name right there.
Dick Grayson.
Let's not talk about another character that DC's ruining.
Yeah. Well, they're going out of their way. And I can't help but feel like Didio, I don't know how you say his name, Dan Didio, has his fingers all up in the pudding, you know? The only other way I think you mentioned this, and it precipitated a thought in my mind, a potential way that this could have gone as a better storyline, Jason Todd.
Yeah.
He's the killer. Right?
They've done so much with him lately, too, I'd be upset. Because they've kind of redeemed him a lot in the last couple of years.
I know, but I'm saying, like, when you consider that his resurrection came as a result of the Lazarus Pit could have some sort of, what's it called? Delayed release reaction kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and because there's the immediate craziness that comes with using it. Yeah,
I like your impression there.
I don't know. That would be great, right? But you know what I'm saying? Like, a character like Jason Todd, who's not as universally loved as Wally, and then again, it ties into what happens with Roy, right? Like, so maybe Roy is the first to die, right? Like, so he has this delayed release reaction. Roy is the one who suffers, and he's like, maybe somebody comes in and he's like, screw you, you need to die. Oh, Harley's here. She works with the Joker in the past, and I really hate the Joker because, you know, it was his fault that I had this thing, and ultimately it resulted in Roy dying, and Roy's my BFF. According to current DC canon, which I'm not even going to get into, other than to say, yeah. But if we're gonna establish that as canon, this makes more sense than Wally. tripping out and covering up his tracks and looking like a hardened killer. And but I mean, I just picked Jason because he would have the name recognition. He would have the know how to cover his tracks. You know, it could be that trigger that turns him. Like, actually, it truly does make more sense that it would be Jason Todd than Wally West.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to ruin your character either. I'm just saying, like, the payoff would be like, oh, okay, this actually makes sense.
In a general sense, it would. It wouldn't make sense given the last couple of years of what they've done with the character. Although they also kind of completely switched him back anyway, so whatever.
But I'm saying that he's a Batman character. Tom King is all about writing Batman.
Yeah.
That one would hurt even more, right? Because they've reestablished him inside the bounds of the Bat family and that sort of thing. To then have him turn around again. And again, it's precipitated on his grief over killing Roy, which I'm saying wasn't his fault.
Yeah.
But then somebody happens in on the scene and he's, his response is, it's not what it looks like. Shut up. Don't say anything. Because his first response wouldn't be, let's get Roy to the Lazarus pit to revive him, but you need to shut up because you're going to, screw things up or something.
Yeah. I think it'd be interesting too, another way. They could, if they had shown us the panel of everybody that had died,
yeah,
and then each issue somebody else died, like they went back in time and were showing somebody else dying, and we're kind of, and there's actually a mystery to it instead of, and kind of like a detective story, trying to figure out who done it rather than just a bunch of random, psychiatric interviews that really don't help us.
But ironically, I think the interviews are one of the better parts of the series because you get a flavor for the character. The only problem is none of it makes sense within what the story that he's trying to tell.
Yeah, I don't think the interviews were that good as much as when they did like little clips of the people in the program.
Yes,
that was good. They made me like Lagoon Boy a lot from that. I think that the little interview things were just kind of cumbersome to try to read and.
But if they intersperse that with the scenes in the program,
yeah,
or whatever, I felt like that could. I don't know.
But I think it would have been better if they had just each issue somebody's dying, and in the last issue you find out who's killing all these people while they're all dying, rather than a bunch of random floaty, discombobulated storylines that somehow all fit together.
Right.
But
I guess the only other way to make it work, but really wouldn't make it work, is if it were all within the program.
Yeah, if the program had somehow gone awry and started killing people instead of helping them.
Yeah.
It'd be similar to your Harley Quinn story.
Yeah.
But instead of it being Harley Quinn, the computer realizes that some people just can't be helped, and it starts killing them. That'd be really interesting.
So that would be sort of the evil side of Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman as the Trinity.
Right. And then they'd be responsible,
Right. And I don't know how to make that work. Like, I couldn't begin to fathom how to make that work.
Well, you could reveal a twist that something like the OMAC program got in there.
Yeah, but when I read it, and that was when I thought of that theory, that was my first thought, and I'm like, I don't want to go down that road again. I hated that story.
Well, and they didn't do it, but it'd be better than what we got.
This is true.
So, all right,
at no point did I think Wally West was the killer.
Where does DC go from here?
Further in the crapper, or can they pull themselves out?
I think the best thing to do is ignore this ever happened and just keep telling stories the way they are. Wally's still alive. Roy's still alive. Just ignore it.
Yeah.
Just move on.
But the only problem is they've established it as canon because Green Arrow's responded to it. The Titans have responded to it. Flash has responded to it in his series. Batman's responded to it in the Flash series. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
They basically
and then
Constantine to shoot them.
And then we have this other big event coming up that could really erase all of it.
You mean Doomsday Clock?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you hear that the next issue got pushed back another 3 months?
It doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And so instead of having one collected edition of the story, they've now decided to split it into two. So one will come out about the same time the next issue comes out, and then the final half of the story will be collected by the spring of next year.
Yeah.
If the stupid story finishes.
If it
what are you guys doing? Like, I don't understand. I thought when you
Well, again, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they're rewriting everything that they had planned.
But they're having to, though. But they're having to, because originally it was supposed to have this big impact on the thing, but because of all the delays, all the other folks are like, well, we'll just go do our own thing. So I think now, what was I reading? It was suggesting the Legion was going to show up before they show up in Countdown to Doomsday Clock. Why can't I want to say Countdown to Final Crisis? I want to say Final Crisis. I want to call this anything but Doomsday Clock. But either way, it's just they've allowed the cart to get before the horse. Except now the horse is dead and the cart is slowly going downhill, and the horse is being drugged downhill with it at a high rate of speed, and they don't understand. Like, we're not going to tolerate this because it's unacceptable.
Yeah, it's like they're forgetting all the low sales that they had 5 years ago.
Oh, no, they're being reminded of it by their investors because they just cut the line down some. Like, a lot of those Age of Heroes, right?
DC's New Age of Heroes.
Yes, all of those got canceled precisely because DC's like, well, we've got to focus on the books that sell. So you're like, okay, but then you're like, why don't you guys make good comic books and stand behind that?
Yeah.
Or make good comic book movies like Marvel, and then you can put out whatever books you want, even if they don't sell.
Marvel doesn't sell good comics anymore. They sell some. They sell some.
All right. Fair enough.
I'm trying to remember which ones that I'm getting right now.
Fantastic Four. Invaders. They got a few one-shots that'll be coming out this summer that sort of celebrate their history.
Yeah. I buy some of their True Believer stuff.
Oh, yes, True Believers.
Reprint. I buy more of their reprints of old comics than I buy their new comics. So
it's a worthwhile investment.
Yeah.
To appreciate those old stories. So.
But yeah, I mean, there's not a lot going on in Marvel as far as I'm concerned. There's some good writers and stuff.
Here's the thing. Thankfully, the stuff that we're enjoying isn't tied into this huge event machine.
Yeah.
I'm so sick of events.
Marvel just kicked off another one, and DC's got a couple more coming down.
DC's got like 5 running at the same time.
Marvel's worse than that, but...
No, because they only do one, but everything seems to get involved.
Well, the only reason I say that is because the only reason DC's is like that is because of rewrites. Like, Doomsday Clock should have been over last year.
Yeah.
Heroes in Crisis should have been done already. It's gone on too long. Because it started last year too, and there's a lot of pushbacks and stuff.
Right.
Not as many as Doomsday Clock, but and then like they've got this DC Black label.
No, they don't.
And they haven't even put out a third book yet, and that started like beginning of last year or something like that. It's been forever ago.
Yeah.
They haven't even gotten the third issue out. It's a 3-issue thing, and they can't get the third one out. I'm like, come on.
Well, it's precisely because DC simultaneously wants to do an adult label, but not an adult label.
So, well, they've got a new series in the DC Black, or at least they've been advertising for. And I thought they had canceled the DC Black label, but they've got a new one. It's something about Batman in the future walking around with the head of the Joker. It's kind of weird.
Oh yeah, I remember reading something about that.
Looks kind of interesting, but yeah.
They also have a Superman story coming out.
That'd be cool.
Frank Miller's doing it. The guy who did Dark Knight Returns.
Right. I know who Frank Miller is.
Okay. I was letting our readers, our viewers know if they were unfamiliar with the name.
Fair enough.
Because you've pointed out to me, I don't always follow creators. I don't know who the guys are on the books.
Yeah. I don't follow a lot of them unless they're current of books that I'm reading. And actually, I don't even know the guy who's writing Terrifics, and it's my favorite book. But I don't keep up with some of the older writers, except for the ones that I have, are the most famous.
Yeah.
So, and that's only been the last year that I've gotten to know all their names. Didn't he also do Daredevil, Man Without Fear?
He did, and that's actually really good. He did Daredevil, Born Again. That's where Kingpin learned who Daredevil really is under the mask.
Yeah.
Proceeds to make his life miserable.
Yeah. So unfortunately for DC, I think the only thing we can do right now is wait. If DC continues to do all this stuff, I'm not going to be buying major runs.
We'll go back to these old comics we can find.
There's a lot of great stuff. There's trades of really great comics. So we don't have to buy the new stuff.
Yeah.
And we wait until they reboot the whole thing again and we get a good Wally West back. And they're like, oh, forget all that dumb stuff that we did in the past and, complain about the new dumb stuff we're doing.
That's right. We'll be here to complain.
That's right. One of the good things about one of the bad things about all the reboots is that they never are consistent with anything that they do. But the good thing about it is that when they do really ridiculous and dumb stuff like what they did in Heroes in Crisis number 8 and number 1, that it's just all going to be erased later on anyways.
Reboots are coming.
So I'm just
walking down the hallway.
I'm just hoping it comes soon. Yeah, I'm hoping they just ignore it like it never happened.
Right.
Like many other stories that they've done that were terrible and they just ignored. They don't talk about it. And hope that people forgot about them. And I'm hoping it becomes one of those.
A great way to do that would be have Wally West show up in Flash and Barry look at him and be like, weren't you dead? And Wally's like, I got better.
Yeah.
Weren't you a mass murderer? I got better.
Be like, I don't know what you're talking about, Barry. Must have been you must be dreaming or something.
Cocaine, it's a heck of a drug.
So, I mean, that would be one time I'd be okay with that. I'd be like, let's get this garbage out of here and let's, get back to real storytelling. And I'm done with Tom King. He writes some good stories here and there, but this is awful. This is awful.
Character assassin.
It's so bad. To me, it's akin to what they did with Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. And
thank you. I'm glad somebody else recognizes that he wouldn't just throw the whole system over.
Yeah.
Like that.
That is not Luke Skywalker.
No.
He might not be, as naive, and he may be not as optimistic as he was in the original trilogy. But he always saw the hope in people. So I saw
and once he signed on to the Jedi mentality, he was sold.
Right. I think Episode 6 is who Luke Skywalker is for the rest of his life. He might be more war-torn and wise later, but Episode 6 is really when he crosses the away from his naivete and his childish optimism, and really becomes a power player in the world. He just only goes up from there, power wise, and I think that's the problem there. And so something similar happened with Wally. This is an egregious sin on DC's part for one of their most loved characters.
Yeah, right.
I mean, if they did something like this with Batman, everybody would be furious, just like with Wally. There's a reason people didn't like Man of Steel, because they changed the character.
Oh, you literally took the thought out of my head and put it in your mouth.
So, yeah. So we'll see what DC goes next. Unfortunately, I doubt that they'll take the smart path and try to salvage what they have and bring Dick Grayson back and Wally West back, and they're gonna keep to the stupid story that they've been telling. Yeah.
Tell us what you thought. Do you like what they've done, or tell us how you think they could have made the story better?
Yeah. Do you have any ideas? Where do you think they should go from here?
What do you think about our suggestions?
Again, try to leave the in-game spoilers out in talking. I don't want anybody to get the movie spoiled from them. Till next week. Next week we'll be talking about some spoilers on the live stream, and hopefully
everybody should have seen it and going back for their second or third trip.
And hopefully my computer will be working better and we can get a good video like we did last week. I don't know why it won't stay consistent, but I appreciate
live here. But we're working on fixing it.
I appreciate the couple people who are watching the whole time. We really appreciate you sticking with us. If you're new here, we'd love for you to subscribe, join the family. We're just a bunch of nerds who love talking about comics and other superhero and sci-fi stuff. And so, love for you to join. You can go ahead and subscribe and give us a like if you enjoyed the video. Let us know if you have any ideas for topics we could talk about. We've got a couple that we're working on
during this video. News and notes comes through again.
And we're pretty good about replying to comments, so we'd love to talk with you. You can always check us out on Facebook. We don't really update the page much, but we're always there on the Messenger, so you can easily talk to us there. That's the only reason
we set it up, is so that we can message you guys.
Right. I at one point I was like posting everything over there, but it just became cumbersome. Eventually, when we get a big enough crowd, we might try to do a live stream here and there. I have no idea how to do that, but maybe we can try. You might get better quality of Facebook than here. I don't know. I don't know why my computer's this bad. I'm just making stuff
YouTube. They've got their premium service thing.
It's probably my computer being stupid. But yeah.
They could be throttling us though.
Right, I'm sure that we're a big threat. DC heard we were talking bad about them. Anyways, so we appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time.